Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland, and this video is about dissident Republicans and Brexit. So I'm looking at Northern Ireland in particular. So we all know Brexit is about the United Kingdom leaving the European Union in March next year. Well, what are Republicans in an Irish context? They are hardline nationalists, and they definitely want none of Ireland to be in the United Kingdom. Why do they choose this word Republican? Well, they want us to be disunited with Great Britain. And what's the first thing anybody would know about Great Britain? And that is that there is a monarch. So they are anti-monarchists on principle, but they also they call themselves Republicans to emphasize they wish to totally reject any connection with our kith and kin in our eastern neighbour. So there was the Northern Ireland Troubles for 30 years up until about 1998. We've had over 20 years of peace, and dissident Republicans have been around and they reject peaceful methods and democracy. And they have managed to kill a few people, almost entirely Irish people they've killed, usually alleged drug dealers. So, and they go around parading in military uniforms. Ironically enough, I think they often buy them from British Army surplus shops, so they are funding the very army they claim to oppose. And I wonder, is stomping around in military uniforms, is that not against the Public Order Act from the 1930s, the one that's used against the British Union of Fascists? But perhaps that only applied to England, not the United Kingdom as a whole. Now, it's different from a band, which have got these faux 18th century uniforms. They really are dressed up like soldiers, dissident Republicans. They call themselves the Irish Republican Army. Obviously, they're not an army. They don't represent any state. They don't represent any government. They are just their own movement. Private armies are illegal, have been for many centuries. So now, what's the key distinguishing feature of Irishness? What is it that sets us apart from the Welsh, the Scots, and the English? Certainly the Republican mind, and that will be the language. It can't be Catholicism, though dissident Republicans are Catholics to a man, so far as I know, because they pretend to be anti-sectarian, despite lauding an organisation which deliberately killed hundreds of Protestant civilians for the only reason they were Protestant. So it's got to be the Irish language. However, their orations are almost exclusively in English, likewise their publications. So it's just risible. Now, obviously there's nothing wrong with being an Irish language enthusiast. You could make you a nationalist, could make you a unionist, either way. But it's preposterous to say we're so different from the English, but we're going to speak their language and be too slothful to actually learn our ancestral tongue. Anyway, they say the last valid election was in 1918. I've actually watched a speech of a dissident Republican spokesman making this ridiculous claim. Now, why would that election be valid and all those for the last century haven't been? In that election, women under the age of 30 were not allowed to vote, with a very few exceptions. If they're on the local government register, they were. For that parliamentary election, women under 30 not allowed to vote. And elections in the recent decades, they have been allowed to vote. So that's how anti-democratic they are. So nobody alive now voted in the 1918 election. So everybody alive now has been disenfranchised by the dissident Republicans. Men under 21 weren't permitted to vote. Migrant labourers were not allowed to vote in 1918. One had to be resident in a place for over a year in order to have the franchise. So there have been a number of occasions in which the whole of Ireland has voted on the same day. For example, at the European elections in 1994, if memory serves. Or let's look at the Good Friday Agreement, 1998. If you take that on an all-Ireland basis, over 80% of the populace voted for the Good Friday Agreement. Those who voted against were almost exclusively unionists. So it's just staggering. It shows how utterly illogical they are, how they are falsifiers of the annals, how they are willfully ignorant, how they're utterly deceitful, that they disregard the plain truth. They have no respect for the historic facts. The Good Friday Agreement was, of course, a partitionist agreement in which it was agreed that Northern Ireland was legitimately an integral part of the United Kingdom and would always remain so unless the majority of people of Northern Ireland decided that they wished to leave the UK and join the Republic of Ireland. The Irish government campaigned for that. The Irish government fully recognises Northern Ireland as part of the UK. The Irish government is consulted on Northern Ireland's affairs, but Northern Ireland is in the UK. So the dissident Republicans, they have perceived leaving the EU as a chance for them to restart this conflict. Well, remembering that Republican adage, hurry with age, that England's difficulty is Ireland's opportunity. And indeed, the Tory party is riven with dissension over this vexatious issue. Now, again, it's bizarre that dissident Republicans should be creating such a hoo-ha about leaving the EU, given that they are dead against the EU. And the Republican movement, certainly in the 70s, was completely against this imperialist European Economic Community as was. Sinn Féin was against it to the late 90s. Even 2009, the Treaty of Lisbon, Sinn Féin, not dissident Republicans, the mainstream party Sinn Féin, fought tooth and nail against the Lisbon Treaty, saying it would be dreadful in oh so many ways. But suddenly, Mary Lou McDonald seems to have completely forgotten her previous attitude. How it was going to cause us to spend too much money, it was going to militarise us and things like that. And it seems to me that literally nobody wants an independent Ireland, including dissident Republicans, who want a Celtic confederation, who want Scotland, Wales, Cornwall, Ireland and Brittany to be in a Celtic confederation, not England because they're not Celtic at all, a bit like in Ireland that we're not at all Anglo-Saxon. We are mostly Celtic, and the English are mostly Anglo-Saxon, but we're obviously mixed in. And what about the ethnic minorities? What about the new Irish? Nigerian Irish people, Chinese Irish people, Polish Irish people, they have an absolute right to be an island as well. So harking back to bygone centuries, well, prior to the 12th century AD, is plain daft. Anyway, I'm worried about younger people getting involved in these dissident Republican outfits, and they don't realise perhaps what vicious hoodlums they are mingling with. Because people born after 1998 have no memory of the Troubles. So they're people in their teenage years who will have a rose-tinctured view of the past and think that it was glorious or almost fun, that there was something uplifting or ennobling about this squalid conflict. And really, I remember it. I was in Northern Ireland only very little bit at that time, only towards the end, and obviously it was faintly frightening. It was banal in some respects, but it certainly wasn't uplifting, morally improving, wasn't exhilarating either. So I think no one in his right mind wishes to return to those dark days. Sadly, some people are not in their right mind. Now, Gerard Adams is someone I heartily loathe. However, I have to give him some credit. In the last 20 years, he has used his sway for the better to try and persuade people to turn away from criminality and to embrace democracy. And in that, he has had a measure of success. But now he is despised as a turncoat by dissident Republicans. The United Kingdom has the absolute right to leave the European Union, as does every other member state. That is enshrined in the Treaty of Lisbon, which was passed in a referendum in the Republic of Ireland. The UK didn't have a referendum on that, unfortunately. Though, oddly, Republic of Ireland has a referenda all the time. But now some Irish politicians are saying that the UK should not abide by the result of its referendum. Although, okay, admittedly, in the Republic of Ireland, if the result doesn't go the way that the Europhile elite wants, then the public is obliged to vote again. So this is this. There will be some complications, perhaps some friction on the border as a result of leaving the European Union, and I'm fairly worried about that they will start their conflict again. But there's no reason not to leave the EU. The UK has the right to leave the EU. It was granted permission by the other member states. The Treaty of Lisbon says that any member state can leave at any time for any reason, without even stating a reason. So this is not a reason not to leave the EU. If dissident Republicans are going to attack, well, that's their fault. The blame is on them. Let it be on their heads. It's not the UK's fault for exercising its right. And one shouldn't be intimidated saying, well, if they threaten terrorist attacks, well, we will let them be in charge. We'll do what they want. And again, it's grossly hypocritical of them to oppose national self-determination. They may say the UK is not a nation. Well, it's certainly recognised as a nation-state legally, and whilst there are distinctive identities in different parts of the UK, it's still a nation-state. Obviously, what is a nation is an imponderable question. There's no universally accepted definition of whatever the UK is. So if there are any physical border posts or border checks, dissident Republicans will try to exploit this issue in order to heighten tensions to set people at each other's throats. and I'm worried that they may have a degree of success in this, but they ought to be treated with contempt, isolated. I really wish they didn't exist. You know, there they are parading, making these blood-curdling threats, showing just how incredibly free and tolerant and humane the United Kingdom is to put up with these loathsome antics.